Welcome to this episode of Mafia's Greatest Hits with Bill Staxx, Mr. Bill Crooks, and Mr. William Oldfield, or Bill Oldfield. Bill, and Bill. What's up, Bill? How you guys doing, man?
Good. I noticed last time we had William Steele on too, so that would have been like 4 Bills.
Yeah, right.
Good to see you guys, man. Great to be back.
Yeah, man, it's going to be a good one. You already know how it is. What's good, everybody? Thank you guys for joining us. You know we're going to get into the history of the Mafia and the Black Hand and all this other stuff. And we're going to get it popping. So without any further ado, we were talking last week about Mussolini and some of the dealings over there. And we're going to pick up from there.
Bill, where are we going tonight?
Okay,
we're gonna go back in time again.
Not too much. I want to just, before we get going, and it'll make sense later, I want you to kind of describe the Camorra, if you could do that, from Sicily.
Well, the Camorra is just another faction in many factions of the Mafia. The Camorra is right now becoming partnered with the Neapolitan or Naples area groups, and they're actually gaining in power again. The Camorra, a lot of people, don't understand that in Sicily, you've got different factions of organized crime. And the Camorra operated mainly, out of Corleone and out of, I try. You have to help me on a couple of the towns,
Campania?
Bill.
Campania?
Yep, Campania, right. And when they came to the United States, they'd already, almost every one of them, basically had been convicted of something in absentia or involved in crime before they left the country. And they were already using, Mustache Pete's were the nickname, that they were given, and they're the ones that really got the Black Hand concept going and used the Black Hand extortion, that faction, if you want to call it, of the Camorra. Bill, I love it.
Joseph's pointing out quickly, Camorra's not from Sicily, right?
Well, no, but I mean, but they have partnered with people from Sicily when they get to the United States. In other words, but over there, they're absolutely separate groups in Italy. And that is central southern Italy, and the Naples group is the Neapolitan, and then you have the Sicilian organized crime, La Cosa Nostra.
You have Ndrangheta.
So yes, do they all fight with each other, or do they work with each other and make money together? Like, how does that work? They're structured in order to work. Do they work together?
Well, in Italy, basically, they have their own territories and their own regions. Just like Bill just said, the Ndrangheta is also another faction. And they basically run their own areas of the country, controlling whatever businesses they want to control: drugs, rackets, prostitution, the docks, industry. But basically, they're in everything. And secondarily, they do operate in a sense together when it comes to controlling the politics and controlling law enforcement. I mean, they all use the same techniques of bribery to control, judges, juries, politicians, getting lobbying to get laws changed by giving money to lobbyist groups, that sort of thing. They're very, very powerful in that respect. In fact, they're an economy amongst themselves.
On the political end, they're kind of known as the High Camorra, right?
What's that?
I think that in the political sense, they're the high Camorra, and then there's like the Camorra proper, almost like two class levels.
They definitely see each other. I don't know if that's still today, but there's definitely sort of
Yeah, I guess I'm talking about.
What is there, like a lower class, like a working class kind of person, like, or less than that, and then
Yeah,
there's like
like
someone
a
with
street level
money,
compared to like
position.
to elite that are
yes.
actually in politics, making policies and stuff. Yeah,
I mean, they have a number
it's
of
like a
people that they
distinction.
have gotten, elected, that they've got, that are involved with them, that they've gotten into the higher levels of society, the higher levels of the blue bloods, if you want to use that term. And then they have the street level, rough and tough, crime. And that way they can influence things that basically, just like when you sell to somebody, you try to sell at multiple levels in the same company, from the lower level people to the higher level people. That way you get everybody to agree in your customer. And that's the same way they are. They see their customer as as their customer is control. And their idea is we got to control it at the lowest levels and the highest levels. So you have the high and the low Camorra. Even to this day, I would say that every one of the organized crime syndicates from Italy and throughout other parts of the world, they operate very similarly in those aspects. And it's funny because if you think about it, think if there's 20 different crime syndicates out there and every one of them is bribing the same officials. Think how well those officials are doing. They're getting money from everybody.
Yeah, they own the judges. It's kind of like what they did when they went to New York. They have free reign of everything. They own the judges, the politicians, right?
Yeah. And now today
Yeah,
they just
I'm not
call
claiming
it
to be
lobbying.
Camorra expert either. There's a reason I just want to kind of introduce this. Jose nailed it when he said clans. The difference with the Camorra, I think, there's not a hierarchy. There's not like the boss of bosses and the capos, the underboss. It doesn't have that structure. It's horizontal, if you will. It's a lot of different.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Clans.
Yes. My apologies about that, Bill. That's true. They have a sort of a different concept of management. They believe that they have family clans that are very, very, very tight, and other mafia organizations, and organized crime will partner. Now, when the Camorra did come to the United States, they found, because of necessity, they still were very clannish, in the 1890s, and when they came here, but they had to partner with other people. It was just because of the nature of all these people coming together in this big melting pot of the United States, which they didn't have where they came from. Everybody looked the same and was from the same ethnicity for the most part. So that they had to sort of break some of their own rules when they came here.
Yeah, so basically back
Right.
then they would have like a grandfather and he'd be the head of the family, right? And then all the underlings would be out there doing things to bring
income in from
flows
all
up,
sources.
right?
Small family.
What's that, Bill?
And then the other thing that's going on from like 1911 to 1912, you're having these trials where they're on the run, and we kind of covered that in the previous ones. So that's happening, and there's this cool picture, kind of cool, where they're trying these guys, and they've actually got them in a cage. So they're being persecuted and stuff. And so what you have naturally is the emigration to America or other places. And now it's worth noting, Camorra is all over the world. I was looking kind of through their thing now. They can point to them in almost every country you want to think of.
Now there you go, Enrico Alfano. That's a classic photo right there. And if you notice how they call him the Supreme Chief of the Neapolitan Camorra. Now don't forget who wrote that caption on there. It wasn't someone who was a member of the Camorra. It was law enforcement or journalists who wrote that, because it didn't. The Camorra didn't really operate that way. They didn't have at the time, in Italy, if you want to call it a boss of bosses per se, the same hierarchy that you see the Sicilian mafia had. They, just like Bill Crooks said, they were very clannish, but I would say he was probably the most powerful clan boss at the time, and so that's probably why they called him the Supreme Chief.
Do you think that there probably were ones that flew under the radar that were never recognized because they weren't known?
Bill, you might want to answer that one.
What was the question?
Do you think that there was mob bosses that were out there operating that never got caught by law enforcement and they just flew under the radar and they were like big as this
Oh,
guy,
in
or if
Italy?
not bigger? Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they were rounding up like sometimes 325 guys. So I think it was, you're always going to have people slip through the cracks, but I think it's more likely that innocent people were arrested than guilty people went free.
Yeah, I mean, look at the size of all these cages, man. They
Yeah,
got them
I don't
packed
think
in
every
there like
single one of those guys
sardines.
was a mafioso.
Probably not.
That's the picture I'm talking about. But it's like a humiliation tactic. You know what I mean?
And look, you see
It was
back then,
effective.
right? It was like that way back then. They would put them in a cage, have them on display for all the world to see. And
Oh,
now
absolutely.
here's
They're
another picture
blind.
from around the 70s where they do the same thing. And they have them on display. This is in Italy.
And that's a
You
trial.
get the same thing. So,
Yeah, it's a mob trial, mafia roundup.
I gotta say,
So they,
if you're on
I,
trial and they've got you in the blues and you're behind bars, you just look guilty.
yeah, it looks terrible for your defense, bro. Like really bad.
It's not like you're sitting in
yeah,
a suit
you
making
know how in
notes.
America you're allowed to put a suit on. They let you go get a cheap
Yeah,
suit and put on so you look good in front of the jury. If you look at the guys
it's
from
the
my book,
presumption of innocence.
the pictures of when they got arrested, you have to see what they look like. They're wearing their work clothes, their bag clothes. You should see the photographs for all their mug shots. Every one of them is in a silk suit, man, with a beautiful tie. He's shaven, his hair's combed, all the mug shots, But you see the other photographs of them when they were rounded up or whatever, it's just
These guys
hysterical
all
how.
have hats on with suits and shit and
See, look
ties.
at that. Every
All of
one of
them.
them in their mugshot is a tie. His mustache has been snipped and his hair's combed, and that's not how they look. That was so they could look good for the yeah. There you go. But that's how they could look for the for the jury, because their attorney would tell them to get cleaned up. You know. But like Bill
Yeah.
said, when you catch them in the cages and you get them when they're when they're wearing those blues, yeah, they all look guilty.
All right, so
Hey, there's
now we're
William
gonna
Steele. It's the four Williams.
we're gonna bring it now to um this guy.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So this is Giuseppe Morello, right?
From
so he's
Corleone.
born in
Whoa.
Corleone, Sicily. Yeah, yeah. He's born like in 1867, and he's kind of a gangster. You see, he's got a deformed hand. They say it was like almost like claw-like. And there's a lot, like we're not super historians on this stuff. I'm not. Hammy is, but if you research these guys, there's not a ton. So you're always going to be looking at videos, and if you're like me, you're lazy and you're just surfing. But I've seen some accounts that are going to dispel almost everything I tell you right now. So why do you listen to me? Oh, because I'm on your screen and I'm sitting next to Hammy. But Morello comes over. Help me out, Hammy. He's like a counterfeiter. He's kind of a thug, right? The hand doesn't seem to slow down. Okay, which always
right. His father was involved. Yeah, his father was a Corleonese. So he was involved. He wasn't high up, but he was involved over, so he already had some connection in it with his family back in Corleone. And he had his his half brothers
relatively early, right?
Yeah, that's true. And so what happens is basically little by little, in the 1890s, what happened around 1892, I think it was, or so. See, they don't have his exact date of when he came to the United States, in immigration. So around 1892, he gets in trouble, and he says he's in self-defense, and a guy tries to kill him, and then but he doesn't kill that guy. But I mean, he gets in a violent situation, and so then he gets involved in some counterfeiting over in Sicily, and so at that point, the officials want him. He's kind of on the run, if you want to call it that, and so he comes over to the United States because he's recommended by his family to leave and come over here, and so he brings over a couple of his half brothers, and Bill knows about the half brothers better than I do. But real quick about Morello, it's kind of neat. Yeah, his half brothers, the Terranovas. You're gonna love this though, that a lot of people don't know about him. when
That's these
Morello
guys, right?
first came over here, he didn't do well at first at all. So you're going to love this. He ran off to Louisiana and took some of his family members that came over, some of his other sisters and other people. They went to Texas or Louisiana, and then they went to Texas and were picking cotton, no joke, in Texas as sharecroppers. And then things didn't go well there. You know, they thought they could get a business started, whatever. They tried and it kind of failed. So they actually went back to where the largest Italian community was at the time, you know, was New York. And they went all the way back to New York City from Texas. And that's when he
no, they didn't catch a lot of fame and fortune in Louisiana and Texas. What they did catch was malaria, and it killed his mom.
Oh, that's true. I forgot about that.
It was that was around the time that they had there was the riot and all that stuff was going on down there, right? In Louisiana. Is that the same time around this time?
This is a couple years after you know, Chief Hennessy was killed, and they had all the issues with the Italians, you know, and the roundups and the lynchings.
The Dagos and shot him.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a few years after that when he comes into town, right?
So it's about 1894 at this point when he's back to New York. Let's say 1893, 94. This is estimated. There's people still have trouble with it. And at that point, he starts doing small time, you know, not racketeering, if you want to call it, small time protection, you know, in
Black hand stuff. And we should mention,
but I mean,
after the father died, it was only like a year later when she married Terranova, right? And they have kids together and stuff. So the Terranovas and the Morellas, they're brothers and sisters and half brothers and stuff. Okay. With the caveat that I read one depiction that was supposedly translated from an Italian book, and it has it exactly flipped. It was the Terranova that married the Morello. But, you know, you're always going to find discrepancies and whatever. But so
when it comes down to it, though,
I think is accurate. If it's not, it's exactly the opposite.
These are
they're always going to be doing that to you. But what? Yeah, I think that's them. Yeah. Well, no, I don't know about that.
The picture we're giving you now is the one that's, I think, the traditional. So the brothers, he's got a ton of brothers and stuff, but the ones you got to know are Vincenzo, Ciro, and Niccolo. They'll be the big players.
And they're all in New York
they had a very
City
large family,
right? So where did they migrate to after they went to New York?
Yeah, that's where they stayed.
No, eventually, this is kind of interesting. I mean, he was up. He went to what would be East Harlem, 107th Street area eventually, but just before that, he basically befriended, if you want to call it that, Ignazio Lupo, and Lupo had a grocery store in Little Italy, and then across the street, number 8, I think it's Prince Street, maybe. He had a saloon, a little tavern right across the street. And eventually Morello got his hands on that saloon, interestingly enough. So they're across the street from each other. And, you know, and Lupo was able to, continue operating in Little Italy. And even though Morello had the saloon across the street in Little Italy, he really operated out of East Harlem, the 107th Street area. And Bill knows a little bit more about how he created his Morello gang and his black hand tactics up there.
Yeah, and the thing about the Lupo, he's known as the Wolf, which is Lupo in Italian. So his real name is Ignazio Sieta, okay? And he marries Morello's half-sister, okay? And now a lot of the depictions you hear, Lupo, they're like, he's a killer. He's killed 60 people. He chops them up and puts them in barrels. And, you know, one of the best things I heard, because I'm all about the story more than the history. But he's like, well, yeah, even at the mention of his name, old Italian ladies would cross themselves, you know. So he was like, and they kind of paint him like he's Morello's right-hand man. But I think he's more than that, and he's a boss, right? And he's a boss of kind of a parallel family, right? And one of the ways you bring these things together is to marry, okay? So he marries Morello's sister, right? And in one depiction I heard, which was great, it said that Ciro induced his sister to fall in love with Lupo.
Yeah, my eye induced his sister to quote fall in love. Well, see, that's how the Morello.
He goes,
By the way,
"It's my
that's so
buddy
interesting
Lupo.
because
You
people,
love him, right? Yeah, the wedding's in June.
you love him right now, tomorrow.
This is Lupo around.
Hey, you
I
can't
think
live without this guy.
this is Lupo around 30 years old. I think he's around 30 in the first picture, or 20 something, and then the next picture is I think he's around 40 or 50.
Now, Lupo is 10 years younger than Morello. Lupo was born in 1877. So that would be what? That would be like 1907 right there.
Yep,
Yeah.
1907
So that's
or
1907.
1909.
He's 30, years old. So give you an idea.
Yeah, and he's marrying
Now,
his sister around 1903.
okay.
So just
And
to
then
put
she
it in
was
perspective, too, you're talking New York has gas lights, right? You still got gas lamps. You've got no cars. Like, you don't have the Model T until 1908, right?
Yeah, so it's like horse and
Kind of sets
buggy
us
back
in the
then.
right way
It's
of
not.
life.
Oh yeah. And the Black Hand tactics, see, this is what's so interesting about how Morello and Lupo work together. Morello, it seems like he's got the Terranovas, his half brothers, and him are operating up all the way up in in East Harlem. That's 107th Street. And then you've got what Mulberry, Little Italy area, is where Lupo's operating. Yet they're partnered, and because of they got the marriage, and then Lupo basically operates, the numbers and a bunch of other different rackets in the Little Italy area, and also acts
As well as
as
the grocery store. Yeah, it's a hard life.
that's his grocery store in Prince. Yeah,
Is it
that was
that
Lupo's.
one?
That was Lupo's grocery store, I think. I think that might be it. I don't know for sure, but it would be 9 Prince Street. If you could see the address anywhere on there, you'd know for sure. But across the street from that is is the saloon that Lupo owned, and then gave or sold to Morello. So that way they had a place to meet. Morello could come down from 107th Street, meet there, talk with Lupo, and they could do business or whatever. But Lupo also was pretty well known as what Bill said, as an enforcer. And Morello, his style was probably one of the most brutal in all organized crime history in the United States.
Yeah, he was murder happy.
Wow, what kind of
he
things
didn't
would he do
negotiate.
to people? What kind of things would he do to people?
Well, real quick, he didn't negotiate.
In a barrel.
Yeah, it's simple. The barrel murders, they would leave them in an alley, or they put them out, 3 or 4 blocks away, where the people where like an old lady would find them in the morning, that kind of thing. So it would be sensational. Morello loved to do it that way, to send a message, because he wouldn't negotiate with other guys that were trying to rise up in power and say, hey, well, let's share power, or you can be one of my lieutenants, whatever. He'd just say, no, I don't like you, and he'd have them killed. Well, everybody thinks that Lupo was his only hitman, but there are definitely other ones that were hitmen for Morello. Yeah, but besides, and then of course he used the Black Hand tactics and the bombings and the maimings and the that sort of thing against the business owners and victims. The Black Hand was he loved using that. He was old school, and there you go. And I mean, there's some pretty disgusting murders. I mean, I'll just say it candidly. I mean, cut the genitals off the guy that was killed, and he'd be found in the barrel with them in his mouth. I mean, some pretty disgusting ways to demean the victim, so people would be absolutely terrified. And they knew it was Morello and Lupo. They just knew it.
So people would not talk. They would not talk to the police once they found out what these people were doing. They were terrified. Like, yo, they put him in a barrel. Shit. Did they like take people and bury them, or like just get rid of them? And
not
so
too much buried, dude.
Found,
a lot of mobsters are lazy diggers, man, but they would throw them in the water a lot.
Yeah, tie something to their feet.
Yeah, and they would blow it up and float to the surface, right? In Jamaica Bay, a lot of times, right?
But I mean,
Yeah,
in this
Jamaica
time, I
Queens
don't
area,
see
right?
a lot of digging. You know what I mean? It's like we'll just leave them out because they're kind of like they're a murder and they're a message. You know, and it's so anonymous back then. You know, like the Italian communities, they don't even know much about it. Most of the cops are Irish.
Yeah, so the cops aren't treating these dudes nice, man. They're probably getting the
Well,
Yeah,
shit
and they
kicked
really
out of
don't.
them every
They're
time they
not
leave the
in
house.
it until the ratting starts.
yeah, this is interesting that between 1894, let's say, and 1909, Morello is probably that's his prime. He grows so quickly because of his brutality, and he gets so many, and every single store owner is paying him, his group, the Terra Novas, protection money, and he's growing, he's making money, he's growing so fast that, I mean, he really is becoming, at that, in that period of time, the boss of all of New York. I mean, the boss of bosses. Any
Because
other
what
faction is terrified of him.
because everyone knows him, right? They're all paying tribute to him.
And
Yeah.
and if they don't,
And yeah, and he's just
they're in a
running it. And
barrel.
if you're the boss of bosses in New York, then you're really the biggest boss in the country at this point.
At
William
that
Steele
point,
said that Morello looks like he's fishing for his four fingers in his pocket.
Yeah, looks like he's looking for four fingers he lost in his pocket.
well, he's got the one finger, I mean, in his claw, so.
He's got this in the thumb, right? It's like a lobster
I don't
claw.
even know. It was like a claw. Yeah, he had like a claw thing going. Whatever. But yeah, I tell you,
But
that
that's the
certainly
funny
did
thing is, like,
slow
he's
him
the
down.
boss of bosses, right? But if you read somebody's take and they're doing it on Ciro, you would think Ciro was the boss and Morello is just a short guy, and stuff. But that's the fun of this, and the frustrating part is that there's such little information, but you got to go with something. But I've read
Oh,
accounts where
everybody has
Ciro
a
was
different take on it,
the
Bill.
artichoke. What's that?
So
Oh
is
yeah,
there?
everybody's got a different take, Staxx, and they really do. They go, well, wait a minute, I know more about it because I knew someone's great great grandfather who told my great aunt something else, and you're like, well, that's great,
You need to do your
but
homework.
no. Oh yeah, we get criticized all the time. By the way, everybody's always going back and forth as to who has the best information. And honestly, there's plenty of information out there from hearsay, but there's some pretty good stuff. If you notice, you can find out. You go to Wikipedia, and I would say, my gosh, whoever wrote that didn't do badly, But it's really more like Bill said. It's not the story. It's really historical, and it's very boring and biographical. They really don't get into the sensationalism. Morello had he had the place. The public safety director eventually at one point of New York, I think, who was Teddy Roosevelt. At one point, and then later, I'm trying to think of the second one, called him a terrorist, not a gangster or an organized crime or racketeer. So they were an anarchist, a terrorist. So you see how the law enforcement didn't really care that much that he was extorting his fellow Italians, business owners. They were more afraid of the bombings and the barrel murders and that kind of stuff, and the terror he was inflicting, because it embarrassed the
That's the
law
fun
enforcement.
story.
And that's the story that makes it fun. The biographical, historical part, yeah, we can all figure out when he was born, when he died, when he had a mole taken off his his forehead, whatever. But when he married so and so, or when he got divorced, whatever. But the fun part is those barrel murders made him. I mean, that really made him famous.
Yeah.
And what was it?
And if you're into that
Benedetto, I
stuff, like
think, is the
all the
best one.
names and the families and stuff, there's these guys called the mob archaeologists, and they will literally, these guys pour through FBI records and arrest records and magazine references, and they will name, like, in 2 minutes they'll throw 20 names at you and all these families and stuff. It's interesting to a degree. But it's not a story. It's facts. And there's a lot of autistic people that like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What are you implying? Something, Staxx? No, come on, Crooks.
Like, when did he wipe his ass, man? That's not right. Like,
no,
come on, man.
Well, I'll tell you. So there's a point where Morello, Lupo, they start getting back into the old business. Besides the numbers, the racketeering, the prostitution they had going, the import export, labor, black hand, extortion, and some bombings and murders and whatnot. Then they go, both of them go right back to what they both did at one point in their lives. Both of them did this, counterfeiting. And this is what gets them in trouble, because before they were just working with city, county, state, local police, that kind of stuff. And what do they freaking get themselves involved in, around 1906, 1907, is they get themselves involved in counterfeiting again, which both of them were involved in at one point in their lives, either back in Sicily or even in the United States. And Morello was figured out a way.
Morello was actually
ahead,
convicted of it in Sicily, although he wasn't there. He'd already ran away.
Right.
But they went ahead and convicted him anyway.
Yeah, and Lupo was involved in let's see, what was it? 1898. Lupo was involved in a little bit of counterfeiting back in Sicily as well. But what he did is he shot somebody who was in self-defense, is what he said. So he flees the United States, and it gets there in 1898. And in 1899, he was convicted as well in absentia back in Sicily.
I have a picture of the $2 bills that they were counterfeiting. So hold on.
Oh, I love it. Great to see that.
Yeah, man. This is what they were doing. Yeah, man. I'm working on it. So this is the counterfeit note that they confiscated from. Look good to me, man. I'll take 20,000, please.
Man, that looks really good.
I was waiting for some black hand drawing, like this real cartoony thing with a two.
They must have had like dyes and all that stuff.
They had to have
crazy amount of money.
They had to have engravers back then. I mean, they had to hand engrave those metal plates with very sharp, detailed tools and magnifying glasses. That's amazing. Look at that engraving work. All those little lines, somebody had to cut those into a metal plate.
All right, I have a picture of his counterfeiter too, the person who did the counterfeiting for him.
Okay, that would be the engraver, yeah.
Yeah, I got him, and I got a picture.
We're waiting.
I'm working on it, man.
It's amazing though what you can accomplish with like the proper precision tooling in a gun to your temple.
This is the engraver.
Wow.
And this is the counterfeiting. This is when they got caught.
Look at that. That is that's great stuff.
And Hammy, you were saying they're also counterfeiting coin.
Yeah. What was going on right around this period of time?
Yo, I'll be right back, all right?
Yeah, you guys
keep going.
You got 1908, 1909, right around that time. What had happened is that after Joe Petrosino, the detective Petrosino, was head of the Italian squad in New York City. He goes to Sicily, and he is gunned down. And the coup de grace shot was actually given by Don Vito Cassioferro, who was the head of the Sicilian mafia. So that was he gave the coup de grace final shot to the head, but and was of course never convicted of it. But at that point, 1908, 1909, 1910. You had people like Petrosino, and then my great-grandfather, Detective Inspector Frank Oldfield, going after these black hand, both Sicilian and Comoran organizations around the United States. And at that point, because it became very sensational, and the crackdown, there have been some successful crackdowns by the federal officials, the Postal Inspection Service, that kind of thing. Using task forces, including city, county, state, local, police, U.S. Marshals, Secret Service, that kind of thing. They were so successful with taking down that international group, the Society of the Banana. They were Sicilian for the most part. They had been successful in New Orleans, been successful in San Francisco. And what they decided to do is the Secret Service, which was the Treasury Department back then, not Department of Homeland Security, it didn't exist. So the Department of the Treasury and the U.S. Marshals and the Postal Inspectors said, wait a minute, we have a technique now of how we can take these guys down. We can find them, get them on federal charges, either using the mail to extort people, that's a federal offense, or
Right.
we can get them for their favorite side job besides racketeering and extortion, counterfeiting. They loved counterfeiting, Bill.
Well,
And
counterfeiting seems like a
for,
no-brainer. I mean, everything you do is for money. Why not just make the money?
yeah. And so what we had is what Bill, going back to what Crook said before about the coin, getting back to it. So the postal inspector, Oldfield, he went after a guy named Salvatore Arrigo. Now, Salvatore Arrigo was the boss of the Bananas, they called it, which was the Society of the Bananas faction of the Black Hand, which was a interstate. It was mainly in the industrial heartland, but it was also franchised across the United States. He was originally caught for counterfeiting in Baltimore before he ever became the boss, and he was counterfeiting coin, if you can believe it. He had a great engraver who was able to make coin anywhere from quarters, nickels, and every once in a while a 50-cent piece. And if you can believe it, nickels.
That was the big
You have to
one.
understand. Well, you have to understand, 3 loaves of bread in 1908 cost a penny. So you get 1/3 of a cent for a loaf of bread. So counterfeiting nickels can be quite profitable because people today just don't understand the different, money, how much less it's worth today than it was then. So a nickel was a pretty big deal. So anyway, so he gets caught, does
I
time
could
in prison,
counterfeit
Salvatore
5
Arrigo.
loaves of bread.
Yeah, but then he comes out to to
Big
Ohio, and
bread.
that's where that Black Hand thing went on. So what happened is the Treasury Department is like, wait a minute, we got a thing now with the Secret, and the Secret Service was the investigative arm of the Treasury Department. So they decide to go after Morello and Lupo. And so the biggest year for busting the Black Hand or the mob at that point in U.S. history was 1909. The Society of the Banana, Black Hand in Ohio and the Great Lakes went down. Lupo goes down in 1909. Morello goes down in 1909. Everybody goes down using
I think they're actually
federal offense.
sentenced in 1910.
What
Yeah, well, that's
happens
when all the
with
trials were.
what
The
happens
big
with
trial started in January 1910 was the big Black Hand trial, in Toledo, Ohio, where 15 of the big bosses go down and they go to Leavenworth and whatnot. And then later that year, Morello goes down, Lupo goes down. I mean, it was really amazing how the federal government just said, we're going to crack down on this stuff because the newspapers and the people, there was a big outcry, and it was embarrassing all the federal and the officers and all the mayors and the commissioners of police and whatnot. By the way, they knew it had been going on for 20 years, but they just weren't, it was quiet enough that they didn't really crack down on it because it was just the Italian community. But finally, when it started spreading outside of the Italian community and the barrel murders and the terror and people getting blown up and all that, all the people, the regular citizens, started screaming about it. And finally, they had to do something about it. It's not like they didn't know the mafia existed.
Bill, let me ask you this then. Why when they got to the 1950s and all that, they try to act like, oh, it's a secret society that doesn't exist. You guys are just why were they acting like that? Were they acting like that because they knew it was infiltrated in their government and they were trying
By
to
the
like
way, the police, politicians, everybody knew about the mafia within, I mean, Dan Hennessy knew about it in 1890, down in New
yeah,
Orleans, the chief of police, because the politicians were already getting their hands greased. And what the Corleone, the Palermo factions, the Naples factions, all these different factions of organized crime that were now living across the United States in different neighborhoods and whatnot. They were taking care of Democratic politicians, Republican politicians. They didn't care which side. They gave everybody money. They were giving the churches tons of money, so the pastors or the priests were looking the other way because their churches were looking like palaces.
yeah.
I mean, St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, I'm sorry to say, and some of the other ones, a lot of those stained glass windows were bought by some ill-gotten gains. That's all I can tell you. And no, I'm not insulting the church. I'm just saying that when you've infiltrated the religion, the politics, the law enforcement, and you've even infiltrated the industrial side. So even the billionaires had like, Rockefeller and those kind of guys, they had to buy the labor from who? From those gangsters who had infiltrated the labor groups and before the unions. And so now you even own them. So they even own the big industrial magnates like Henry Ford and Firestone and Rockefeller and Carnegie and all that, because that labor, if there was any Italian labor to be had,
Yeah,
you had to go
shut
and
it
talk
down.
with the boss.
Shut
Yeah,
it all
they could
down.
just shut it down and say,
Yeah.
you take care of us, or no one's showing up to work, and this is before unions. So, I mean, at that point, so anybody who says, 1950, before the meeting, in Appalachia, New York, that, oh, this, I'm going to surprise, the whole world is so surprised, the mafia, what's that? We never heard of it. Don't forget, there was a huge meeting in Ohio in
Who knew?
1909. So the law enforcement, everybody knew about this stuff. They just kept it quiet because everybody was getting paid.
Yeah, and it's worth noting at this point, like under Morello were two capos named Giuseppe Masseria and Salvatore De Aquila. Right, so they're up and comers.
Well, they're youngsters, really, if you want to call it that. They're captains.
Yeah, no, they're
so,
running around in short pants at this point. Yeah, look at him; he's so cute. You just want to pinch Masseria's cheeks.
His little fat
I did a
ass.
podcast on him. Like he started off young, like they would do like kind of like Delaney, who ended up being fierce, but they started off just doing these little bungling crimes. And I, in one of my podcasts, I had him like they're gonna break into a safe, right? So they dig through this brick wall in an adjacent apartment and stuff, and they get in, and then like nobody can crack the safe stuff. So they end up going up, but then they notice a big hole in the wall. A cop sees a hole in the wall, which they patched by like stuffing towels or something in the hole, right? And he's like, "What the hell's going on?" Then he sees Masseria and his two buddies walking down the street covered in brick dust. They don't speak English very good, so they all go to jail and stuff, and it's pretty funny. And you almost feel sorry for him at the time. They're like, he's at his trial, like rambling on, going, "I am not a rich man," and he's not at the time. So these guys, like everybody starts somewhere, man. And this is where they're starting. They're bunglers.
Well, yeah,
and they're lower key
right,
guys.
exactly.
But
They
they're
start out
about to
as
become
bunglers,
big
but they're
guys.
well trained.
That's crazy. They go
And
from
they're
that to
about
what they
become
become.
huge. Yeah, that's
Oh,
Manzano.
massive.
Is that Manzano?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Now Al Capone's like
It's
11 years old
Maranzano
at this
and
point.
Masseria, man.
Yeah, there you go.
That might
Now,
be
you guys
that might be Messina. I think that's mislabeled.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't think
well,
that's
that's Maranzano.
There's not a lot of
That's
pictures of
Maranzano.
him. Certainly not like that, but he was a handsome guy. He looked similar to that.
Yeah, a lot of times
Yeah.
they mislabel the pictures with different names. I noticed that. It's certain pictures
and I think
are
Maranzano, there's
mislabeled.
not a lot of pictures of him. Most of the ones you see, he's dead.
Yeah,
Anywho.
on his death pictures.
And he's not coming out for a while anyway.
But the person.
So anyway, they go to jail, right? They go to jail. Maranzano gets 25 years. Lupo goes with him. Actually, Niccolo Terranova gets busted too, but somehow he gets off, and he ends up taking over the family.
Well,
right?
But they were running the counterfeiting ring, and it was actually we're talking some big printing presses. They had some major stuff. I don't know where they got the money, but I'll tell you, it was amazing the amount of how sophisticated it was. They had to run it out of the Catskills. They ran it way outside of New York City, in a out in the middle of the country to keep it down. And what's crazy is that you're gonna think this is nuts, but Lupo gets what? He gets paroled after 10 years, so he gets out in 1920.
Maranzano had a similar situation.
Yeah, but Lupo gets out. Morello gets out earlier, though. Morello gets out after I think 1916, right? He gets out after like 5.5, 6 years. You're gonna love this. If you in 1920, I think it's Lupo. I have to check it for sure. Ignazio Lupo. I'm pretty sure that he wanted to go to Italy, right? So after his parole, so President Warren Harding, the president, gives him a freaking special permission to be able to go to Italy if he behaves himself, That's
Yeah,
just
he gets
crazy,
him
isn't
off
it?
his parole. He gets him off his parole stipulations.
Now, does that show you that, that, wait a minute, the mafia, everybody says, oh, the mafia didn't exist. How did one guy, one thug, if you want to call him that, let's call him a thug, how did
Yeah,
his attorneys
presidential
get him in touch with
clemency.
the president of the United States? Because he is greasing the pockets of politicians, and all of his buddies are all over the United States, because there's no way the president is gonna give a special commutation to some little counterfeiter from New York. Okay, I don't care what is,
Especially a
unless
Jago.
maybe they're,
Right?
especially
On top of
in
it.
1920 of an Italian. Yes, absolutely. And so that shows you, the fallacy that people hear about. Oh, we've never heard of the mafia. We have no idea where they came from. That kind of, they don't exist. No, obviously, if President
Yeah, and
Warren
it was
Harding
so
did that,
clandestine until Gotti wore nice ties. You know what I mean? That's what you hear.
exactly. So, I mean, you don't get the
But
president of the United States involved in anything. And by the way, the president wrote in his order that he will be the one who makes a decision if Lupo misbehaves in the future. If he's going to take away his special parole, and he'll have to go, back to jail for 5 or 6 more years or whatever. The president is the only one, not
no
the
more
U.S. Attorney
bodies and barrels.
General.
That's another question.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, it's amazing that I just think that's nuts. But
But yeah,
he was,
hey,
remember, he was given a 30-year sentence, man.
so another guy jumps onto the scene right around this time, and he starts plotting on how he can do things. This guy.
Oh, the National
He's
Crime
young.
Syndicate.
He's still young, man. He's still, like I said, he's still in short pants. The killer takes over for Lupo, okay? And this chain of families, if you will become the Gambinos, okay? But the Morello faction is the Genovese. So they're a little, they call them older, but to me, they kind of ran parallel, but, what do I know? So Tequila is taking over. He's coming on, okay? And Nicola Terranova is taking over for Morello while he's in jail, right? Well,
Right.
I don't know. Morello's almost better off in jail because Nicola starts trying to increase his stuff, right? Now he goes after, let me look at my stuff. He looks at this guy, DeMarco, okay, who owns restaurants and casinos and stuff. He wants to take his shit now, okay? Now, at this point,
Right.
they're still getting along with the Kimura. Like, they're grilling out together, going to parties. They're still cool, right? So he's going to go after this guy, DeMarco, who's got a lot of shit going on. So he gets with these other guys who are called, who did he recruit? Let's see. I got some notes here. Anyway, he recruits these gangs, and they're gonna kill DeMarco, right? So they get a buddy of DeMarco's, and they're gonna set this up. And DeMarco knows very well the Morellos. He's gonna see them coming, right? They can't get in. So they do this clandestine thing. They get this gang to come with them, and they're gonna shoot him and stuff. But something goes wrong. Somebody's late. Oh, the hitman's late, right? The hitman's late. They miss
It's
him.
classic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So they take another shot at it. And the next time they bring more guys, and he's like, I'm going to point him out and you'll shoot him and stuff. The friend, this is mafia typical shit, right? The mafia guy's like, look, he's a buddy of mine. I'm not going to kill him. I can't do that. But I will sneak your guys in and I'll point to him.
Right.
My hands are clean.
I washed my hands. See, my hands are not dirty, right? Yeah.
Scratch
I'll
my
point him
head,
out to
point
you.
down.
He's right. He's right. Oh, he's right over there, but I have nothing to do with it. No.
Oh, okay. It's the Navy Street Gang. That's what they're called.
No blood
Everybody's a
on my
gang back
hands.
then.
Yes,
I used to make
that's
jokes
right.
about it. Navy Street Gang. That's who it was. And there was a Coney Island gang too. But like I said, man, if me, you, and Hammy are hanging out, we're a gang. But anyway, so he brings him in, and now it's going to go down, right? And there's a lot of different depictions to the story of how it goes down. The one I like is he's like going, there he is, right? And DeMarco's in there with this guy Lombardi, right? He shoots the wrong guy.
He shoots Lombardi.
DeMarco's there with his buddy Lombardi. Lombardi gets shot, right? All hell's breaking loose and stuff. And he thinks he got him. He's like, I got DeMarco and stuff. And the guy that, like, his name's like Terranoza or something. The guy that was there to set up the whole thing and point, he's finally like, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, shoots DeMarco himself. He has to do it himself after all. But somehow they get out, they escape a window and stuff. And now this DeMarco's gone, right? And things are opened up. So everything's supposed to go good for the Morellos, except that the Camorra decide, like, hey, there's a big void here. We're going to fill it, right? So they start muscling in too, like, hey, we're going to get a little piece of the pie. And now you have a problem that's called the Camorra War.
At this point, that's where basically the Black Hand, for the first time, they really don't do this. They really didn't do this that much in Italy, where they actually fight amongst each other. I mean, they were able to make, their own territories over in Italy, these different clans, and avoid a lot of killing each other. In other words, one group would pick would be, I'll do the numbers racket, we'll do the alcohol, we'll do the prostitute. I mean, a lot of them really took care of that, just out of family patriarchs, old grandpas of each clan talking to each other, if you want. And but in the United States, it's amazing how somehow, for the first time, they start killing each other. And it's amazing. New York was so big and so bustling and so rich and so busy. There's so much going on. I can't even believe that they were foolish enough to do that. There was plenty of money for everybody, and that's something I've never understood about how that happened. I mean, Bill, you know more about it than I do, about that particular war. I just don't get why they decided they had to muscle in on DeMarco's, rackets, because there was plenty for everybody. They could have just met and said, here, you get these restaurants, you get this import business.
Old-fashioned greed.
Yeah.
And this doesn't end. This ends with the Casa Marizzi War. Everybody wants to be the boss, because it's funny, because we're thinking about it like rational people. They're gangsters, man. Like,
I want the number one spot. They don't care about other people in their way, man. They're like, no, these dudes are you stepping on my toes. They're not going to take no for an answer. They're not, they're not.
Why would Gotti defy the chin and kill Paul Castellano? It makes no sense, but he did it.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
They're gangsters, man. They're not like normal people. They don't give a F, man.
Yeah, they're not like it's not like they have to live by this certain code. They can break the code if they want to live with the consequences,
Well, what amazes me is how how
they are the toughest.
Right.
Yeah.
But what amazes me is, you get closer. I know we're going to get to that later, but I mean, you get around 1920. We're not there yet, but I'm just saying, and that's when you see, Short Pants Luciano, the National Crime Syndicate start to appear, that kind of thing. What's interesting later on, all these Black Hand guys, it took till the 30s and some of them the early 40s, but they slowly get muscled out by a whole new mindset, as the Camorra, kind of fades, and the Sicilian Mafia more or less takes more control, and integrates some of these old Camorra people into their organizations too. But they get away from the violence because they don't like getting in the newspaper. As the mafia sort of becomes mature in the United States,
the violence is at a head right now. This Camorra War,
right now, this is
2 years.
Oh yeah, and it's just massive. 1916, 15, 16, and 17 were brutal. They were the amount of killing that went on.
The Navy Street gang was with the Morellos, right? But after this, there was some bad blood, right? So they kind of flip, and they're with the Camorra, and they try to set up Morello. They try to set them up, and actually Niccolo ends up getting killed. Right, he gets killed, and I guess.
Well, make sure you clarify to everybody listening. Niccolo Terranova, who was the half brother of Morello. Yeah, the Terranovas are half brothers.
They sometimes call him Morello because they take Morello's name when it's convenient. So a lot of people think
they go back and forth.
Morello brother. They go back and forth with the names when it suits them and stuff. So the Navy Street double crosses. They set up Niccolo. He ends up killed. Okay, and the guy, his name was Verrazzano, the guy that set up and was pointing. That guy.
Yeah.
He ends
This
up taking
guy,
on some extra rackets and moving in casinos and stuff, so he gets killed. Yeah, so he gets killed too because he was trying to open a gambling joint that like interfered with Kimura and stuff. Okay, so finally, they're like in 1917, which is like toward the end. There's a guy named Ralph the Barber Daniello. He's from the Navy Street gang, right? He rats. I guess he got busted. I don't know that for a fact, but he tells everything about everyone, and he was there for a lot of the murders. Okay, but most of the ratting he does falls on the Kimura side, and they
right?
fall apart basically. It implodes, and
It's actually
the
kind of
people that are
the
left
beginning of the
end
end
up
for the Black
integrating
Hand,
with
if
the
you want to
Morello
call it
gang.
that. Yeah, it's basically the beginning of the end of the Black Hand itself.
Dude says,
The
was
concept of the
Johnny
Black Hand.
Torrio and the 5 Points gang fellas the ones that succeeded the Black Hand?
That's far later. That's Chicago.
Yeah, that's a lot
Yeah,
later.
Torrio is Chicago.
We're at about 19 what?
We're way
Around
Right
19.
before
now we're
this. Yeah, you're talking
1917.
about like a step ahead of Al Capone.
Right now, Al Capone, like
But it's worth
it's like
mentioning that
19,
Torrio the
18,
Fox
19.
was called in to Chicago to eliminate the Black Hand because his boss was getting threatened by the Black Hand and stuff. And Torrio came
Right.
in and cleaned it up. No problem. He took care of those guys.
That's
so in
down
a way,
the road,
yeah,
though,
he succeeded.
right?
It's down the road.
Well,
But he did
that's
take
probably
they
where
had
the
a problem
question
with
came
Black
from, by
Hand
the
that
way.
They couldn't solve it. Torrio solved it. So
And
anyway,
it's that
bunch of
if
guys get killed and stuff. It climaxes in 1917 when Andrea Ricci, who is the leader of the Camorra, is finally gunned down.
Who
Okay?
takes
So
control
then you
once
get
he's
like
gunned down? Who takes control once he's killed?
Camorra's doesn't take control. It assimilates in the Morello gang again, right? But the problem is Morello's getting out of jail, like we said. Okay? So now he's thinking like, hey, I'm the boss again, right? Well, Tequila is going, yeah, not so much. Okay?
right.
So now you've got this problem. He puts a hit out on Morello and Morello's people, okay? And he uses Umberto Valente, the ghost. Okay? I've got him in my podcast a lot. He's a established hitman. He is really good at what he does. Okay? And now Masseria is getting really big too. Really big. Okay? And somehow Umberto has been like Tequila's enforcer. You know, he's been taking care of business and stuff, but he has a falling out with him. I can't remember what it was, but to prove himself again, he's going to take out Morello and he's going to take out Masseria. So as soon as Tequila goes after Morello, Morello goes back to Sicily because he's got mafia connections there, and he's going to bolster support for himself to come back and try to pull some strings and get himself in. So in the meantime, the ghost is going to go after Masseria. Okay. And this is a great story. This is before he's Joe the Boss. He's walking around. He's in his suit. He's got a straw hat on. He's not even armed. Okay. Masseria's not at this time. He's walking down the street. Umberto and another guy are behind him. They've got him pegged, right? He walks in front of a hat store. They've got him dead to rights. And these guys have killed a lot. They're ready to go. Some little insect part of Masseria's brain realizes like something's not right. He catches them, right? They pull out, dude. They start shooting at him. He's a big fat guy. Now, Masseria, we haven't really talked about him yet. He's portly. He's known for like shoving food in his face and like eating a big plate of spaghetti as a side dish. Like you're eating dinner with him. He's got food hanging out. He doesn't speak good English. And he's actually a progressive at this point because he thinks that maybe you can work with Sicilians and Italians, right? But forget Luciano's Jews and all this other stuff. That ain't happening, right? The progressive is like, maybe you don't have to be pure blood Sicilian. Maybe you can be from Southern Italy, right? And it's like he's the progressive. But anyway, they start shooting at him. He takes off, dude. Like I always compared him to Rerun from What's Happening. Remember Rerun, the big fat guy that can dance and break and shit? You know, he's doing that, dude. They're shoot. He gets out and ends up upstairs. They miss him, dude. They miss him. And the police show up and stuff, and they find Masseria upstairs. He's winded because he's fat, right? And he's obviously got his adrenaline pumping. There's like 2 bullet holes in his straw hat, man. So now he's a legend. He's the man that can dodge bullets. Okay. So yeah. So now he's on his way. He's going to be Joe the Boss very soon. And
Go say what's going on with Morello at this point?
Morello is his kind of like getting underneath. He's getting underneath Masseria now, which is interesting.
Okay, so Masseria basically, Morello's has he come back from Sicily?
He's not blowing him. He's not blowing him. He's like a concierge.
Well, see, that's what a question I had when we talked before, Bill, is that so Morello's like, I get out of jail. I go back to Sicily because I feel the pressure. There's been a hit put out on me. I can survive that. He comes back from Sicily thinking he's got some support. And Masseria sort of says, okay, fine. You can be my consigliere. Is that what he basically said? You're not going to be the boss anymore, but you can be my advisor.
It seems counterintuitive because these guys usually don't step down. But by everything I can deduce, yeah, he did. And that tells you like the kind of guy Joe was. Giuseppe was no one to mess with. Like I make fun of him a lot because he's dead and it's a long time ago. He was a bad, you know what I mean?
And he ain't gonna do.
Well, it's fun to make fun of these guys. I mean, you take their physical characteristics and you hear about some of their habits, and it didn't sound like they grew up and and went to finishing school. That's all I can say. When it came to their eating habits, it came to their behavior.
Yeah, and I joke around, but like if I'm in the room with these guys, I call them sir, and I'll shine their shoes or whatever because they're kids. But they're better than me.
I think.
You know what I'm saying?
I think that's where we all would be. So he can actually so Morello actually becomes an advisor, right? I mean, he becomes an advisor to Masseria, And so, what is Morello at this point? What does he have to offer? What is he really giving Joe?
Okay, let me tell you. We've got this problem with Umberto Valenti trying to kill him, right? Trying to kill Masseria. Right. So they arranged this meeting because they're like, look, things are out of control. We got to establish peace. We got to get this going. And they call him in, and they're like, hey, we got to talk about how to end this conflict, and we all got to get back to business. Okay. He brings Luciano with him. I think he brings Vito Genovese, right? Luciano brings Genovese and stuff. And they're all going to sit down and have this conversation, and they're going to work it out with Masseria and all this stuff. Well, they sit down, they're at the restaurant and stuff. Things are a little awkward. Hey, guess what? Morello's there. So Umberto Valenti realizes things are wrong. I think he just gets up and the shooting starts, right?
That fast?
He almost gets out. Well, he realizes something's wrong, and now it's because everybody's like, we're going to start the meeting in a little bit. It's all good and everything. He's like, this don't feel good. So he's a hitman. So they get up, the shooting starts and stuff. He almost gets out. I think he crashes through a window, and he jumps on the floorboards of a car. He's getting away, and the way the legend goes, it's crowded. There's like, I think a horse got shot. All hell's breaking loose, like a movie's letting out. There's all these things going on. He gets on this thing like a car with a floorboard, puts a gun in there. He's like, drive, and they're driving, trying to get him out. Luciano comes out by the legend, takes a careful shot, and boom, he kills the ghost. Now the ghost.
Wow.
The ghost.
All right.
And
now, how old's Luciano at that time?
He's young. He's young.
I mean, okay, was this 1920?
19.
What is this? What is this 19? What is this 1919, 1920? What year is this that Umberto gets nailed like that by Luciano?
1920.
1920.
I think it's 19.
Okay.
Whoa. Yeah, I'm gonna say 1920. I'm spitballing.
I'm trying to think when did so Morello survives this whole situation. Genovese survives it. Masseria survives it,
up
right?
To this point, to the point we're at now, yeah.
But I mean, they all survive this incident where Luciano survives it. What's that?
Yeah, but Vincent Terranova is now gunned down. Niccolo's already dead, And
Right.
Vincenzo, he gets killed in like 1922. But
And so
Ciro's still
who's
kicking.
left at this point? Yeah, but see, so who's left at
Cyril
this point?
Terranova.
Morello's still alive, you know, and one Terranova is still alive from the very
Masseria is
beginning
going to
of our
become Joe the Boss.
conversation. And does Morello stay in there and continue to advise him? Because Morello
this
lives
point,
until what,
he's still
1930,
alive and
right?
still advising. We're leaving off at 1922.
Okay.
Before the Castle Moresi War. That's where we're
All
going
right.
to
So
stop.
yeah, before we
And
get it,
yes,
that's a whole
Morello
other
is
war
still
right
alive
there.
at this point. Yeah, he's still alive at this point.
Yeah.
So basically, so
what happened
Masseria at
after
this time,
the killing of the ghost, the kill is losing power. So he's kind of going to try. He's going to try to fade into the background, and Masseria ascends.
so Masseria takes over basically all of New York at that point.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
That's the
it's
plan.
working that way, like it's going to that. And then you have Mazzaria and what's the other guy's name? Maranzano. And then they start going at it.
Yeah, trouble. There's always one guy that just doesn't want to see this happen.
Like,
And then we
nah,
have
I'm
the
not
Castle Moresi
like
War,
they're
which we'll do
just
next
like, I'm
time.
not tolerating it. They won't accept that this guy's the boss, and they want to go at him for the power. So that's what's gonna happen.
Okay,
So
so we're leaving off at 1922. Basically, you've got Masseria, you've got Luciano, you got Vito Genovese, you've got Morello, right? Everybody, you know, and you've got
Carlo Gambino is coming over at the age of 19, like a mafia prince. Yeah.
and then Al Capone comes into the picture, and everything starts really picking up, and it's gonna get good.
Picking up.
So don't miss next week.
That's the thing. Like
Thursday.
when you first see these mob movies, it seems like it's cowboys and Indians that just pop out of the ground. But I'm hoping what we're picturing is now that there's so many other forces at work, from Italy to Mussolini to Sicily to the differences between Italy and Sicily historically, and then the Italian
and then you
struggles.
have America, though. You have America's coming together at that time.
It's amazing, by the way.
There's so many forces at work that are making all this happen.
And all this money's available, and all this, and this exploding, industrial age of the United States. I mean, there's money everywhere, and these guys are just like
right around the corner. Yeah.
Yep. And we can get to that next week.
Yeah, man. So make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you can get our videos every time they drop. I appreciate both of you guys, man. The link is in the description of this video for this guy's book and this guy's podcast. So go check them out. And hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Share the video. Donate to the channel. If you don't got it, share the video. But I'll check you guys next week, man. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Good to see you, man.